Good evening. I'm Soraya Mia. You're watching AWANI Tonight. Higher airfares will be a current norm as airlines take advantage of the post-COVID-19 pandemic travel boom to lock in higher prices. This is according to Capital A Berhad Group CEO Tan Sri Tony Fernandez. In an interview with Bloomberg Television, Fernandez pointed out that travel value has also increased after the pandemic, as people have not traveled for more than 3 years. The rapid rebound in travel post-pandemic, he said, had caused high fares charged by airlines globally as demand outstrips supply. He also dismissed the notion that the current airline fares have been deliberately made expensive, adding that the current fare pricing structure had already started even pre-pandemic in 2019. In other news, the government is still open to discuss whether the Universities and University Colleges Act 1971, or ACU, should be repealed. However, Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Sri Fadilah Yusof said it would require engagement with all relevant stakeholders, as there are many factors to consider.
Memang kita kena mengambil kira banyak perkara dan sudah pasti apa yang dicadangkan itu akan kita bawa melalui proses yang biasa dan mendapat input daripada semua pihak yang berkepentingan. Adakah ianya perlu direview, direpeal ataupun ditambah baik, itu bergantung dengan apa saja finding yang akan dilaksanakan melalui engagement pada pelbagai pihak tersebut. Terima kasih.
Fadilah was responding to Indra Makota MP Datuk Sri Saifuddin Abdullah's question on whether the government intends to abolish the act, seeing that there has already been groundwork to do so laid by the previous administration. Last Thursday, Higher Education Minister Datuk Sri Muhammad Khalid Nordin announced that there are no plans by the government to repeal the act, as the law was still needed for administrative purposes. The act was amended in 2018 to abolish Section 15A in order to allow student involvement in politics. However, there have been growing calls for the government to do away with the law, as it restricts students' involvement in politics. Meanwhile, the government is also looking at several short and long-term measures to reduce overcrowding in government hospitals. Fadilah Yusof said the Special Task Force to reform the public sector, or STAR, will spearhead the initiatives, which involves collaboration with private hospitals.
Sebahagian pesakit-pesakit yang mungkin bukan menghadapi penyakit yang kritikal akan boleh mendapat perubatan di klinik-klinik swasta. Dan juga begitu juga yang datang khususnya waktu odd hours daripada 6 hingga 12 malam, kalau yang tak berapa-apa tu, di mana mereka boleh dihantar kepada klinik kesihatan berdekatan, klinik daerah, di mana waktu operasi mereka akan dilanjutkan sehingga ke 12 malam. Ini merupakan langkah jangka pendek dan juga langkah sederhana dilaksanakan.
As the country aims to widen its coffers in order to fund programs and initiatives for those in the lower income bracket, there are still concerns that added pressure on those with higher income may cause dissatisfaction among the group. Arina Najwa Ahmad Said from Baharu Group Asia weighs in on the concerns around taxation policies for Malaysians.
I mean, with regards to the taxation, obviously, there will be some quarters that will be quite worried, especially with issues of the capital gains tax. So I think there's a concern around whether or not the introduction of capital gains tax will cause the wealthy to have capital flight and would leave the country, because now Malaysia, they feel that they are subsidizing Malaysians who are amongst the lower income group. So I think there's that fear. And maybe what could have been done better in this front is maybe assess the risks first before announcing it, and then maybe that will give some sort of certainty to people that some research or some kind of more concrete findings has been done to ensure that it's not going to be something that's just going to be implemented. So maybe that's one area that could have been improved.
Although Arina believed the country was moving in the right trajectory, she said that implementation of monetary policies will be crucial in assessing performance of governance in the long run.
So if we're looking at budget, it's sending the right signals. So although we can't expect a lot of change overnight just from one budget. So I think definitely from the beginning of his administration when he came into power, he's sending the right signals in terms of equity, in terms of justice, in terms of transparency and governance. So I think that is a good signal, and hopefully that will be carried out to implementation, right? So the government, when you're looking at the budget, when you're trying to see redistribution of wealth, I think we also need to be cautious and see how this is going to be carried out and whether it will be fruitful.
Anwar Ibrahim's cabinet had fewer than 90 days to draw up a new budget 2023. Did they err on the side of caution? Tonight on Consider This, we speak to Deputy Finance Minister Stephen Sim about the thinking behind Budget 2023. We'll go for a quick break. Stay with us.
Sebelum kau keluar, Jo.
Kau trust aku tak?
These boys, there's just something you're not telling us.
Kalau kau tak datang malam ni, lagi keras kau kena. Ini boleh biar! Apa kata kau orang settlekan dekat manifesto? Kalau aku menang, aku nak Mama ni berambut daripada sekolah ni. Welcome back. Kappa.
High Council. Stream episod Baharu setiap Sabtu on demand dan Isnin di Astro.
You might not be her father, but you were someone's.
Say who you can say.
Bersih has called on the government and the opposition to negotiate a law to provide Equitable Constituency Development Fund, CDF. The law would encourage distribution of equitable funds for all MPs, taking into consideration state needs rather than a blanket distribution. The electoral watchdog said it was a missed opportunity in Budget 2023 to create such a meaningful reform.
Even if we don't agree with their politics or ideology, they are duly elected. And because of that, as a matter of principle, when you give allocation or withhold allocation from these opposition MPs, you are in some way disrespecting the voters of those constituencies. And it is quite contradictory to Malaysia Madani, where one of the pillars is respect. The second reason why this is important is a matter of the manifesto. PH made it very clear in their election manifesto that they will give equal CDF to all MP, regardless whether they are with government or with the opposition. So this is clearly a manifesto promise. And I think the third reason that is, I think, very important also, I think all Malaysians, regardless of which political divide, we want to see political stability. And one of the problems that we see in the last few years is party hopping. Now, one of the main reasons given by those who usually hop to government side, is the CDF. Because when they are not with the government, they don't get anything. But when they hop to the government, they get in the past 3.8 million a year allocation to be dispersed out.
Thomas said that it does not take a lot for the government to implement the reform.
We will regard this matter of Equal Constituency Development Fund as a low-hanging fruit. In other words, it is something very doable. Right now, it is totally at the discretion of the Prime Minister. And what will it cost taxpayers? So the government MP get 1.3, but now as far as we know, the oppositions are not getting anything. Now, If you were to give 1.3 to the 74 opposition MP, it comes to 92 million or something like that a year. Now that is 0.024% of the budget that was just announced, 386 billion. Now it's just a tiny drop, but I think it will go a long way.
On the foreign front, Hong Kong will drop its COVID-19 mask mandate. Effective March 1st, Hong Kong is one of the last places globally that still imposes a mask mandate. Chief Executive John Lee said the move to scrap the mandate was part of an effort to lure back visitors and businesses and restore normal life after over 3 years of strict virus rules. Hong Kong and Macau both followed China's zero-COVID policy for much of the past 3 years. Macau said on Sunday that it would drop mask requirements for most locations except public transport and hospitals. Meanwhile, in mainland China, residents are not required to wear masks outdoors, but encouraged in public indoor areas like airports and train stations. Hong Kong's government this month launched a promotional campaign to bring back tourists and businesses. There had also been criticism by diplomats and business groups, saying COVID rules threaten Hong Kong's competitiveness and standing as an international financial hub. Meanwhile, China says it may consider allowing unmarried women to access egg freezing as a measure to preserve fertility. This as the country battles a slump in birth rates. China last year recorded its lowest birth rate in record of 6.77 births per 1,000 people. A member of China's top political advisory body, Lu Weiying, said she would also propose including infertility treatments in the public health insurance system. Lu, who is a fertility doctor in Hainan province, said giving single women access to freezing their eggs enables them to preserve the eggs before they pass their peak reproductive years. She did say women still need to get married if they wanted to use the frozen eggs and get pregnant in the future. Currently, fertility treatments such as in vitro fertilization (IVF) and egg freezing in China are banned for unmarried women. China has been trying to bolster a faltering birth rate, with incentives including expanding maternity leave, financial and tax benefits for having children, as well as housing subsidies. China's one-child policy between 1980 and 2015 and the high cost of education were among factors contributing to the demographic downturn. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrived in Central Asia to meet officials from all 5 former Soviet republics. His visit comes just days after the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, deemed a test to Moscow's influence in the Central Asian region.
It's important, of course, on a bilateral level to build on the remarkable work that's been done now over more than 30 years. To deepen and strengthen our partnership. And I think just in the last couple of years, we've made further important strides in that direction.
This would be Blinken's first visit to the capitals of Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan and Turkmenistan as the Biden administration's top diplomat. As the February 24, 2022 war progresses, Central Asian leaders have been encouraged to stand up to Russia by their newfound leverage as Moscow looks to their markets and trade routes in a bid to circumvent Western sanctions. U.S. officials say the Biden administration stepped up engagement with the region in an effort to demonstrate the benefits of U.S. cooperation to the countries facing economic fallouts from the conflict to the West. None of the Central Asian nations voted yes on the United Nations resolution last week, calling for Russia to withdraw its troops from Ukraine. That's all for this show tonight. Thanks for watching. I'm Soraya Mia, and we'll see you again.
What's the latest scoop when it comes to companies, markets, and strategies? For everything business and tech related, catch Notepad with me, Ibrahim Sani, weekdays 10:30 p.m. across all AWANI platforms.
Hello and good evening. I'm Melissa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is a show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. Joining me on the show today to delve beyond the headline figures of Budget 2023, we have Stephen Sim. He's one of the two Deputy Finance Ministers. He's also the DAP Member of Parliament for Bukit Mentajam, a seat that he has held since 2013. Stephen, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. If I may, point out the fact that this cabinet had fewer than 90 days, I think, to put together this budget coming into office. You were given a position at the federal level in finance, so really throwing you in the deep end when coming up with crafting a new budget. Can